Chapter 2. Care. Care is an essential element of love. Loving anything would be difficult if you simultaneously didn't care about it. If you want people to feel safe under your leadership, if you want them to trust you, if you want them to be loyal and hardworking for a shared cause, you have to care. And when I say care, I mean really care. We're conditioned by society to dislike work or see it as a necessary evil rather than as an inspirational part of our lives. Caring about something, at least in my formative teenage years, and in my formal business education, was regarded as lame, quaint, and naive, or a sign of weakness. That callous sentiment lives at the heart of a phrase we hear too often. It's not personal, it's business. We've created a paradigm where being professional is different from being a decent human being. I call BS on this. I don't buy the whole broken setup. It's about time we start really caring about things, taking things personally, not professionally. Distancing ourselves emotionally from outcomes is only seeking to protect ourselves from embarrassment and shame. And anyone who has seen a Brené Brown talk on shame knows that it is not the ideal way to go through life. It's time to stand up tall and be bigger than that. Leadership demands it. You need to care deeply about your people. Consider these questions. Whom does it benefit if you don't really care what happens to your employees outside of work? Are we really so callous we think the only time our people should matter is when they're, quote, on the clock? When you talk to your team members, do you consider how your words and tone influence your relationships? Do you assume that you know someone's pronouns? A critical aspect of care is respecting people's identities. If you don't care about someone enough to think about what happens to them after you fire them, then did you care about them enough when you hired them? These points are meant to suggest that you think about the person, not the employee. I'm not advocating that you call your employees on weekends to check in on them. I'm simply encouraging you to create an opening so that your team members know you're available to support them. If you notice that one of your team members is sad or seems off, it's fine to be concerned. It's fine to check in on them in a caring and non-invasive way. It's kind of a jerk move to suggest that they leave their personal lives at home and be professional. When you care about your people, you are available for and interested in them while also understanding and respecting their boundaries. Some successful organizations work well together for a short period, but then begin to see the team dynamic break down. I've seen companies who let exceptionally talented people walk out the door because they didn't care enough to notice the signs that someone was dissatisfied, unchallenged, and disengaged. I had a front row seat to see someone laid off over the holidays right after they'd asked about their job security before making a serious financial decision. This person also had just completed a lengthy project that would go on to earn the company money. I've even seen companies lose their most valuable team member by totally bungling time off for a death in the family. Can you even imagine negotiating timelines and pressing for status updates with someone who just lost a loved one? Problems often arise when people think on short timelines or only about their own wants and needs. The easiest way to increase your level of care is to think about your relationships on a longer timeline and focus on them instead of on yourself. When you do this, you will naturally take more care with the relationship. Even if the person you care about spends only a few days on your team, thinking about the relationship as long-term and taking greater care with it will benefit you and the other person. You never know when a relationship will come back around. A team will be successful as long as they care about the same goals and each other. If that breaks down, so too does the team. The potential for long-term success on a team increases proportional to each person's level of care for everyone else on the team. Even if you need to remove someone from your team, do so with care. What happens to someone once you no longer employ them should matter to you. If it doesn't, then there wasn't enough diligence in hiring that person in the first place. You also need to care about your work. How great can you be if you're only putting in a satisfactory effort? How hard will your team work if they see you phoning it in? How outstanding can your team be if you expect only that they get it done, but not that they strive for excellence and care about the outcome? Caring about the work is a sign of your belief in the integrity of the work itself. Your loving leadership needs to include your inspiring love for what you do. And you need to care about your organization. Hopefully, you're in an organization that you can be proud of. Because how extraordinary can your company or your team be if you don't care about the legacy you're building? Is this just a job? Or are you trying to be legendary? Every person at your company reflects the organization, and likewise, the organization reflects every person who works there. If you are going to work for a company, you should be willing to care about what happens there. You should be willing to fight for what is right there. You should be willing to defend your people to the company and the company to your people. You do this because you care. Put people first. Before we go further, I should probably clarify what I mean when I talk about love between a leader and team members. Love means that you care about your people and protect them from harm, that there's a strong sense of respect, that you have a commitment to honesty and transparency, that you accept people exactly as they are without seeking to manipulate them while supporting their growth, success, and happiness, that you are thoughtful about relationships over the long term, considering the impact of how you communicate and always choosing to be kind. Let me be clear. Lovable leadership is not about people liking you. No matter how much you care, not everyone is going to like you. This has always been difficult for me throughout my career, but it's true. Some people may find your personality grating. They may not like how you dress or even the pitch of your voice. They may have a host of unconscious or conscious biases against you. Regardless, there's still room for them to love you in all of the ways I described above. That said, it certainly doesn't hurt your chances if people like you. In fact, there's a strong scientific basis for believing it has at least some importance in your ability to influence people. Robert Cialdini's seminal book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, details the 6, quote, weapons of influence, end quote. One of those 6 is affinity. The idea that people are more likely to be influenced by those they like has been tested and validated. However, as I mentioned, despite the obvious benefits, lovable leadership is about more than just whether people like you. You need to do a lot more than simply being nice to your people, liking them first, and avoiding situations where they might resent you. It's your job to help them grow, which means you may need to do uncomfortable things, like challenge them. In your commitment to stand for their growth and success, you have to let go of any worries about whether or not they like you. Put your people first. On my podcast, Shareable, I do a segment called Mic Swap, where I let the guests switch places with me and become the host. One episode, my guest was Doug Sandler, host of the Nice Guys on Business podcast. When he switched places with me, he asked me to rank, in order of importance, these 4 parts of my business: employees, customers, products, systems. Without hesitation, I answered employees first. Why? Because I know that if I build an extraordinary team, they are going to take care of our customers, and they will ensure the best service and products. It's simple. Your employees come first. In the Lovable Leadership Framework, there is no other answer to that question. So what does it mean to put your team first? Stand for your people. If you want to gain your people's trust, show them that you are willing to stand up for them at every chance you get. When a team member doesn't have to question whether you are on their side and watching out for them, they start to trust that support will be there when needed. Furthermore, when you walk the walk and get in the trenches with them, your people will grow to trust you. When your team trusts you enough, they will not hesitate to follow you anywhere, even into battle. By being vulnerable, authentic, and transparent, you allow your team to truly connect with you. This, in turn, opens the door for them to be open and vulnerable with you. This helps build connection and understanding, and creates the condition for open dialogue and coaching. Few people are open to coaching or guidance from someone who doesn't understand them. Among the defining moments for any leader are those in which they have to choose whose side to take. To inspire trust and safety on your team, it is imperative that you take advantage of these opportunities to reinforce each team member's position and to signal that you will protect them. Standing for your people is not optional. It is not a passive afterthought. You must be on the lookout for these opportunities, because if you do not come to their defense and stand for them as an ally, they will remember it. Stand for them against outsiders. I've been in the world of client services for more than a decade. I have been part of an agency, I ran my own agency, I was on the leadership team of an agency, and even now, I work with several agencies. Agencies have clients, all sorts of them, with all manners of personalities. It should come as no surprise that, on occasion, my teams have had some difficult clients with personalities we didn't quite mesh with. We've even been in situations where the client was upset with us and their words and tone made that obvious. As a leader, I have often had to bear the brunt of these uncomfortable conversations. This is part of agency life. When a client takes a negative tone with me or says something nasty, I will listen, take ownership, and give them the benefit of the doubt. Up to a point, of course. But the minute a client or anyone else speaks down to one of my team members, I squash that crap immediately. One team I led had a client who, because of a typo, insinuated that we were incompetent. If the client had referred to me alone, I would have calmly replied. However, when they accused my team member of being inept, I intervened immediately, stating that we did not speak to one another that way and that they would not be warned again. Regardless of the size of a client or how much they mean to the business, there is simply no room for disrespect. If it's not something you would say to your team, never let a client say it. Your team is watching you. It is your job to keep them safe so that they can do their best work. Stand for them against each other. As organizations grow, the culture becomes more difficult to manage, and the complexity of intersecting human emotions grows too. In organizations, especially large ones, there will be personality clashes. When these conflicts arise, it can be difficult not to take sides. You may have a favorite among two people who are arguing. You may recognize the implicit value to the business that one employee has above the other. You may see one employee as being right and the other as wrong. None of this is easy. There is no one method of dealing with these conflicts. But if there is one important thing to focus on when dealing with internal strife among your team, it is this: the common goal of the team. You must acknowledge both parties in the conflict. Your commitment must be to find a resolution such that everyone on the team is willing to put down their swords in service of the larger business goal. In this way, you show that the team and its health above any individual are most important. You remind them that working together outweighs any single conflict. This does not mean a license to excuse bad behavior. This does not mean that you do not take corrective measures for bad behavior, bad work, or generally poor teamwork. It simply means that your primary objective is the health of the team and all of its members, followed by the accomplishment of the business goals. By acknowledging the experience of all parties involved, you can avoid making any one person wrong and instead focus on all team members working more effectively together. Put the onus on them to learn about one another and how to best work together. Use the moment as a teaching opportunity to transform the conflict into greater connection and teamwork among your team members. Stand for them against themselves. Believe it or not, one of your primary responsibilities as a leader is to stand for people against themselves. This is far more common than you might imagine. You may have to stand for people against themselves more often than you will against their teammates, your clients, or anyone else. All people struggle with imposter syndrome and negative self-talk at some point in their lives and careers. When a teammate is down, beating themselves up, or questioning their own abilities, your job is to be their cheerleader, the voice of positive reinforcement. Being a leader gives you the incredible opportunity to build something larger than yourself. Your words and actions can ripple far into the future. Your leadership lessons will stay with your people long after your work together has ended, and may, in turn, shape how they choose to lead. Growing team members is among the most important aspects of leadership, and one in which I have always taken great satisfaction. Whether it is helping people acquire a new skill or working with them through a challenge, watching my team members level up has always been a joy for me. I believe that it is essential to recognize how vital your role is in helping your team grow and what an honor that is. Remember, it's not about you. Helping a team member grow is about them. How you provide that support will vary. In some cases, you may need to offer hands-on mentorship, and in others, you may need to relinquish control and let your team members work through a problem on their own. Talk to them to get a sense of what they need. Ask them if they'd prefer that you take a more active role, point them toward resources to handle issues on their own, or let them handle problems entirely, but support them with regular check-ins. In some cases, a person may not know what support they require, so you'll have to make a judgment call. As long as you've included the person in the process and heard what they had to say, they should trust you. Listening to them is more effective than assuming you know best. Even if the outcome is the same as it would have been had you made a unilateral decision, including others in solving a problem is a better approach. This is important because it affirms how you see your team members in the context of the team. Selfless service. Many leaders struggle because they believe their team is there to serve them. One of the most impactful changes you can make is to flip that. When you commit to serving your team members rather than expecting them to serve you, you will find that both happen anyway. Service is a two-way street, just like trust. If you want people to do something for you, you need to do something for them. If you want people to care about you, you need to care about them. And if you're wondering why you need to go first, it's because you're a leader. So what does it mean to serve? A good starting place is first understanding each of your team members' goals. When you understand their objectives, you can align those with your own goals. Once you do that, helping your team members accomplish their goals also achieves the team's goals. So, what does this look like in practice? Take this situation with Luke, for example. Luke was accountable for operations at the agency. He was working nights, weekends, and had too much to do to make an impact in any one area. As a result, the team's project management tool was long overlooked. It was painfully outdated and did little more than list the names of each client. I knew this was slowing everyone down and creating immense frustration. And as the customer experience got worse, the entire business was being put in jeopardy. The problem was, Luke was reluctant to let anyone else help. Rather than reprimand him or reorder his priorities myself, I sought to find out what he really wanted. If I asked Luke, he would have said his goal was to get everything done. But that wouldn't have solved the underlying problem, as more tasks would inevitably come across his plate, and the team would still have no project management tool. In talking to him, it became clear that what he really wanted was to have his nights and weekends back, to take his lunch break daily, and to go to sleep at a reasonable hour. This was the key to getting the project management tool overhauled in record time. If I'd talked to him about getting a new project management tool implemented, it would have just been one more thing for him to do, or responsibility being ripped away from him. Instead, we talked about getting him more of his time back, and it started with getting a new project management tool in place so that we could see everything that needed to be done and reassign things to other people so he could finally have some more balance in his life. I offered to bring in other team members to collaborate with Luke on the process. Once we got the goals aligned and mobilized the team in service of one another, what was more than a year overdue took only 2 months to fix. By understanding Luke's goals, we could align our goals with his to make progress. Luke has regained, most of, his sanity, regularly takes lunch, and works past 6 o'clock only on rare occasions. It's important to understand that I'm not encouraging a self-serving tactic so that you can accomplish the goals you care about. This isn't about manipulating others so you can get a promotion. When you care about helping others accomplish their goals and grow, that's when you can really make an impact. Not only will you accomplish the goals that your organization or team care about, but you will also deepen your relationship with the team members you serve. In Luke's case, I really wanted him to have a lunch break, get more sleep, get back to the gym, and bring a smile back to his face once in a while. Yes, you must care about the goals of your organization or team. Yes, you should care about your own goals. If you want to realize both, then the best place to start is by caring deeply about your team members and their goals. When you are in service of the people on your team, you can change lives. Show them how to behave like a leader and inspire them to be in service of others. If you play that out in your mind, isn't that just a little bit more exciting than just helping the company make a little more money? Be a cheerleader and generous with acknowledgement. A basic principle of effective leadership is appreciating and acknowledging your people. Everyone wants to feel important. Everyone on this planet seeks acknowledgement and validation. Sure, some say they don't, but truly, validation from others, although not a great way to establish your self-worth, is an ideal way to know that your work and contributions have meaning and purpose. In my early 20s, I read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Everyone remembers something different from that book, but what stuck out for me was his writing about acknowledgement. Quote, "Remember, we all crave appreciation and recognition, and will do almost anything to get it. But nobody wants insincerity. Nobody wants flattery." End quote. Similarly, William James is quoted as saying, quote, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." End quote. So, if this is one of the deepest principles of human nature, why would you not appreciate your team and acknowledge their contributions? What you'll hear from great loners is an account of the many things they alone did to get where they wanted to go. What you'll hear from great leaders is what their team did to get them there. Related to the principle of acknowledgement and appreciation is understanding that it starts with you. To engender love and respect from your team, you must love and respect them first. You must be willing to take the first step because, as the leader, you set the tone of your relationships with your team. You cannot expect someone to love and admire you if you do not create an environment in which that is a possibility by first loving them through acknowledgement and appreciation. Be generous and sincere with your praise. When a teammate performs a task, give them credit for it and do not steal their moment. Say please and thank you. A great article from Inc.com relates an interaction between Michael Jordan and Coach Mike Krzyzewski during the 1992 Olympic Dream Team. Here's Coach K. Quote, "It was after our first practice, and he came over and said, 'Coach, I'd like to work on some of my offensive stuff. Would you please work with me?' I thought he was coming over to give me a hard time because he's from North Carolina and I'm from Duke. And I actually think it was his way of making me feel comfortable. He said, 'Coach,' and he said, 'Please.' And when it was over, he said, 'Thanks.' He could have said, 'Hey, get over here, idiot, and work with me.' And I would have done that. I would have done it. Just like a lot of people in workplaces will do their job. But then I would have felt inconsequential and had no ego whatsoever because it was stripped from me by the main guy. Instead, he gave me a chance to have an ego. He called me with respect, 'Coach.' Just like knowing a person's name, he said, 'Please,' and 'Thank you.' In other words, there was no organizational chart where he was the top guy and I'm here on the bottom. It was a tremendous, tremendous thing. Coach, please, thanks. 3 simple words. 3 powerful words. Words that built a bridge, established a relationship, and harnessed the power of asking for help. Buy lunch. Sometimes. This is a small one, but it can go a long way. When you can pick up lunch for the team or buy a round of drinks or anything else like that, you should do it. Typically, leaders make more money, or at the least are believed to make more money, and buying lunch is a sign that you're willing to forego your own interests for the team's interests. This is also, yet again, backed by research. Earlier in this chapter, I mentioned Robert Cialdini's book Influence, and specifically Affinity, one of the 6 weapons of influence. Well, another one is reciprocity. Gifts are a way of collecting small bits of social capital by creating social debt. I'm not suggesting you do this as a means of manipulation, but rather, I want you to understand the impact that something like buying lunch can have at an unconscious level. Do it solely as a kind gesture, knowing that generous acts often enhance your ability to influence others. Lovable Leader's Cheat Sheet. To show my team that I care, I will make my leadership about them. Acknowledge and validate them. Be mindful of small gestures like saying thank you. Stand for them against outsiders, each other, and themselves. Serve their growth and success. Be their biggest cheerleader.